Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to be reviewing the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. This particular car is the top of the range petrol Gran Coupe. It's the 440i. It's striking, it's beautiful, just like the 6 Series Gran Coupe, and it's very different from the sort of run-of-the-mill 3, 5, 7 Series saloon sort of shape. It's got a very, very nice silhouette to it, and in fact I've had this car parked in my village for the past week or so, and I've had so many people come up and compliment it. Like, so many people. The colour, for one, which is Mora metallic purple, I think, or maybe it's just Mora metallic, and it's an individual colour, which is £2,750, so I can't imagine too many people ticking that box. But many compliments about that, and many compliments about how beautiful this car looks. It's a very, very striking shape, and it's just a bit different to everything else. You know, it's very different to a lot of BMW's lineup. So what is the Gran Coupe like? Now, we've already talked about how different it looks, and that alone is probably enough to sell to a lot of people. A lot of people that maybe don't necessarily like the average BMW 3 Series or whatever. It is effectively on a 3 Series platform, but it rides and handles differently, it performs differently. Now, let's just talk about its weight firstly. So, if we're comparing the weight of this 440 to, say, the equivalent 340, so the same engine, same running gear effectively, the 340 is a good 100 kilos lighter. And then you go up to the 540, and that's maybe just over 100 kilos heavier. So, this car at around 1700 kilos sits in between the 3 and the 5 Series in terms of weight or mass, and you feel that. It's initially, when I picked this car up in the wet, it felt very rapid and very fast and effective, but I had just jumped out of a 320D. Now, after driving it for a few days, I've realised that there is a lot more mass behind this car. It doesn't feel 5 Series heavy, but it doesn't feel 3 Series nimble, and it certainly doesn't feel anywhere near as quick as an M140i or an M240i. You can feel that extra few hundred kilos really blunts the performance. Now, don't think that this car is slow, because it's not by any means. We're still talking about a realistic 0 to 60 time of about 5 seconds flat, and you know, I'm sure it would smash into its 155 mile an hour limiter. In terms of sort of straight line performance, it is blunted compared to the M lights, but it's still very fast, and I think 0 to 60 in 5 seconds is fast enough for pretty much anyone. In terms of its handling, now its handling's a strange one, because even though it is heavier and it feels like you've got a lot of mass through the corners, it does handle extremely well. Like, it stays composed. The suspension setup, especially when you leave it in comfort, is really, really nice and smooth. And as I talk about a lot on my channel, when you've got a really nice plush suspension, it just means that when the car's going through a bumpy UK corner, it just tracks, and it's always finding grip. So even though it's a bit of a softer setup, to me it feels softer than, say, a 340i, definitely softer than an M240i or an M140i, but again, you can use that to your advantage in the fact that, you know, our roads are just terrible. So the softer ride means the car is more settled, and therefore you're gaining grip in places that you wouldn't be in stiffer cars. So yeah, so ride quality is good. In comfort, this one's got adaptive. Again, you'd be a fool not to get adaptive on pretty much any BMW that I've ever driven. It just makes all the difference, and it just gives you that option of more comfortable ride or more sportier ride. Don't think of this as a sports car, because at the end of the day, we're talking 1700 plus kilos. It's a heavy car, and when you really start pushing on, you notice that weight, especially when you come in hot to a corner on the brakes. You can feel that extra mass, and it also struggles more out of slower corners without an LSD than the M lights do. And a lot of that's got to do with the fact that this doesn't run Michelin Pilot Super Sports or even PS4s. It's got a much harder compound tyre, so it does have issues coming out of slower corners. but it's also got, you know, a lot more mass to drive out of these corners. So it's a brilliant all-round package, but don't jump in this thinking it's going to be a sports car with 4 seats, because it's not. Now let's talk a bit about the cabin. The cabin in here, so it's a 3 Series effectively, like I've said, it's on a 3 Series platform, but when you get in here, if anything, I don't know if it's bigger dimension wise, and in fact the sloping roofline makes it feel maybe a little bit more cramped in the back, but just the finish, the way the leather sort of curves around, especially on the rear seats, stuff, just makes it feel a bit more special in here. And yeah, it's actually quite big. It's a lot bigger than I thought it would be, and I haven't driven a 6 Series Gran Coupe for a while, but off memory they're not actually much bigger than this car inside, and I'm guessing that's just, you know, this is a newer car, it's a newer design, so they've just managed to find a bit of extra space here and there, even though the chassis and the shell is smaller effectively. But yeah, certainly in the back there's room in there for me. And when we get to the boot, I would say the boot is almost, this car's almost in between a 3 Series Saloon and a 3 Series Touring in terms of available boot space and practicality, because the boot in this thing is absolutely huge. And when you fold down the rear seats, I got in this the other day, and literally it's almost the size of my double bed with those seats folded down. I mean, it must be a good 5.5 foot from the back of this seat to the boot sill. So you could get all sorts of things in here with a massive sort of hatchback style boot. You could really, it's a really good load lugger as well, and you would not expect that on a car that looks as hot or as sexy as this. You'd think it was all form over function, but in fact it's not. And that's what I've learned a lot about in this car, that it's not just form over function. It is, yeah, there's a lot more to this car than meets the eye effectively. Now yes, you do pay more money for this over a 3 Series, but you kind of, you don't have to spend too long in here to realise why. You know, the interior is nicer, the exterior is maybe not nicer, it's sexier, it looks maybe more premium, but I don't know if I prefer it over a 3 Series, probably not. And if I could have any of them, I would have a 3 Series Touring, because I really like the big boot, the mountain bikes, and I just love the shape of the Touring. So yeah, it's an alternative look, as we've talked about. Now, what else? So yeah, we got this, in this particular one, the 440i, we got the fantastic B58, and I've mentioned that the performance is blunted, but still absolutely stellar. Its economy is very good, as I've talked about on the M Lights before. Obviously that's also slightly blunted in this because it's carting around a lot more weight, but it's still very good. And in fact, I did a long run the other day and I got home and it was in the high 30s, which I thought was very impressive for a 4-seater family car that's capable of 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. I think high 30s is extremely respectable in a petrol car. We know there's mega diesels out there. You know, there's the 435D, which would, you know, return the same performance figures and certainly return even more MPG, but not a massive amount more. Now, you know, petrol technology has come a long way, and this B58, it really doesn't embarrass itself in terms of MPG, especially as it's mated to this 8-speed ZF gearbox, which just utilizes its power and torque so well. In fact, this whole review so far, I've been in full comfort drive. You know, I haven't touched the pedals. But the great thing with this car is when you want to change things and you've got the adaptive suspension, you reach down here and you put it into Sport Plus. Immediately I can feel the ride stiffening up, I can feel the steering getting overly heavy, as they all do in all the modern BMWs and most German cars these days. Fakery of heavy steering, I personally can't stand it. I prefer the weight of the steering when it's in comfort. And I know you can sort of configure sports standard sports to have whatever you want, but in Sport Plus, unfortunately, it always goes into that. And Sport Plus is like my default mode because you get a bit of slip, you can play with the car a bit, you know, but it's still relatively safe. And put the gearbox over into sports automatic now, so that's now giving me quite an aggressive gear change. So I'm revving 3,000 3.5. I'm just putting my foot down a little bit here. 4. There you go, it changed at 4. Whereas normally in drive it would change at about 2 and a bit. So less efficient, but in the power range. You know, it's I've always got the power there. So I just flex my foot a bit here. It's dropped down a gear, and it really takes off. It really does. Manual mode, as with all BMWs, is fantastic. You know, ZF's just so quick, and it will change. It will always change. It will change if you want it to change, if it can change. If it can change and hit the limiter, it will change for you. So let's put it into first there. Lovely. And just pulling out of here, we'll just give it a little bit of a hard acceleration. Engine is a lot more muted in this as well, and obviously that's got a lot to do with the exhaust, and I know that the very latest M140s and 240s have got a lot quieter as well. It's all to do with emissions and whatever else. And again, in this car it's very quiet. It's even when you're in Sport Plus in here now, you can't really hear the engine unless you're really pushing on, and then you can just about hear it. But it's not like a scream. It's not, don't think like M135 sort of sound in the cabin. You just don't get that. You get, if you're used to a 240 or a newer iteration of the 40 cars, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it is, yeah, it's unfortunately it is muted in here. But when you do put your foot down and you get the revs up higher, you do hear some more engine sound. And I guess there's a plus side to that, in the sense that at least we're not getting too much fakery in the BMWs these days. Like the very latest ones, they seem to have turned down that sound box quite a lot, which has reduced engine sound, but it also makes the car and the sounds feel a lot more authentic or organic. So good and bad things. So we're just coming out of this town now. We're still in a 40 zone, so I'll just take it a bit. We're still in a 30 zone. I'm doing 30, by the way. So you can just hear the engine now. I wouldn't say it's the most tuneful thing. But yeah, just coming out of town now. So we'll put our foot down and let's listen to the engine. So that's red line at 7,000. And again, I mean, it really goes. You know, it's a fast car. You're not going to get in this thinking it's slow by any means. Even if you jump out of an M car, you're not going to get in this car and go, it's not very quick. It's just not quite as sharp as the lighter cars, which is understandable. Now, who would buy this car? It's a difficult one, because yes, you are spending more money to effectively get a prettier and a heavier 3 Series. So you're losing performance, but you're gaining looks, potentially. I mean, that's subjective, you know, like some people might think it's prettier, others might not. So if you do prefer the way this car looks, then it's almost a no-brainer, because you are getting a bit more standard equipment, you are getting a nicer interior, undoubtedly, and it just does feel that bit more premium. You've also got things like the pillarless doors, which are really cool. I do like that look. It's the typical sort of coupe look. When you've got all the doors open, you've just got the door itself and the window, or if the window's down, you've got nothing, just the door. There's no frame around it, and it looks cool. This car's got the head-up display, which I absolutely love. I love head-up displays. I've had one on my 7 Series for the past 3 years, and whenever I drive a car with one, it just seems so natural and normal, and that's where all cars are going to go. That's where all cars should go. That's where technology should go. You know, Audi in their beautiful looking virtual cockpit, or whatever they call it, the crazy digital dash, which BMW is sort of doing now as well. That's, to me, that's not really progressing or going anywhere. It's fancy, it looks good, but it's not any safer. It doesn't really help. But yes, it gets your eyes away from the nav screen there, and you're looking down there, which is better than looking over there, I guess. But when you've got a head-up display, you're looking down the road, which is exactly where you need to be looking. And I can be looking at the road, I can be checking out everything. I can, you know, my peripheral vision is still there, but I can see my speed in that as well, which is really good. And if I've got my sat nav running, I've got directions coming up from there, and there shouldn't be any reason that I take my eyes or peel my eyes away from there. And it's good when you're really pushing on. it's good to be able to sort of gauge your speed, check out the speed, make sure you're not breaking the speed limit by too much. So we'll push on a bit now. We're in Sport Plus, so stiffer ride. It's a bit overgrown, so I can't really see too far down the road, so I can't go very fast. Over this brow, onto the nice big heavy M Performance brakes. Come out, get a little bit of slip there, but not too much. There's no LSD, so go through this dip. This is terrible tarmac, but again, out here, a little bit of slip. And it revs out really nice there. A bit blind through here, and wait for the range over there. But yeah, it's good. You can push on, you can have some fun, but up to a certain point. This road surface is terrible. You can use the torque of the B58 to really move along. And that's what's so great about this engine. So great, but also, yeah, it just means you miss some of the old stuff. Any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll try and answer all of them. And as I mentioned before in the previous video, Tony is doing some amazing deals on these cars. I'm not being paid to do this or to say that, but he's giving me cars, so I'm helping him. And at the end of the day, Tony gives some of the best, if not the best deals throughout the whole of the UK. So what is wrong with that? I can't see. Anyway, cool guys, take it easy. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you at the next one. Cheers.